Mr. Gross, I want to bring this to you. So one of the talking points here is how we verify what is going on in Gaza, and I think this statement from the US Embassy really speaks to that. Now, Israel doesn't allow international news organisations into Gaza, so where does that leave us in terms of verifying what's happening in Gaza?
Well, I mean, look, always in wars, there's what's called the fog of war. There's a lot of disinformation and misinformation. Israel says that journalists will, end up getting themselves killed to enter the middle of a war zone in a very small territory. But it's not that difficult for international media to, at least have a little bit of skepticism when Hamas just issue some statement claiming that this hospital was hit or so-and-so died. We've seen consistently, both in this war and in the past, how figures have just been made up or entire incidents have been made up. I just want to address your previous question, though, about the UN that I got cut off from before. Yes, the UN has a role, UNHCR, which is the main body for refugees, but UNRWA, which is a special body set up only for the Palestinians, has been compromised. And that's why Israel, and indeed I should say various European governments, absolutely do not trust UNRWA. They also have Western officials just making stuff up. Only last week, a senior UN official said that 14,000 babies died within 48 hours in Gaza. He told the BBC flagship Radio 4 Today program, it's just nonsense. So yes, maybe some emotionally heated UN officials are also capable of saying things that are totally untrue, and all this makes it harder to to bring peace that we all want and to move ahead with a better situation.
I want to bring Dr. Dermitage in here. As you're saying, the UN officials are making stuff up. Do you agree with that, Dr. Dermitage?
Some officials.
Just I can only remember, again, Mr. Secretary General, I think it is the first months of this conflict. And we have a very famous, of course, expression in diplomacy. It was persona non grata, as all maybe public opinion knows that. The person who is prohibited to enter the country. And maybe the human history, the diplomatic history, has an important shame with the decision of Israel. I don't know the latest situation, but still, I cannot find any logical and any rational, also irrational explanation to find such a decision of Israeli country that Mr. Antonio Guterres cannot enter this area. How can it possible? Mm-hmm. Now I think a flotilla, a small ship is on the way. Also Ms. Greta Thunberg, I think an activist, and some of the other activists are on this boat. And I will be, of course, many of us are very worried about this situation because, the recent years we had also some very important casualties, civilian casualties, and I hope that such personalities, innocent personalities, will be not harmed in such an atmosphere where maybe the highest diplomat, maybe the highest authority in diplomacy, which, in my belief, actually, it is the Secretary General of the United Nations. And now, if Israel denies such a personality, what can it make, in the next step? So I think there must be definite change in Mr. Netanyahu's government. There must be definite change in diplomacy of Israel. We still trust Israel's democracy. We still trust Israel's stable authority, which once make a stable atmosphere in the Middle East for a while. But still, I think they must accept, first of all, some atrocities, some deep atrocities really was carried on and still is continuing.
Mr. Gross, I want to bring you back to this statement from Washington. Why do you think that Washington felt the need to get involved in this? And something that was mentioned in the statement is what's going on in the US, in the sentiment in the US at the moment.
Yes, look, I realise it's hard for people to believe that the UN, which people talk about in sort of lofty terms, might not always be a force for good. But what is the UN? It's a collection of, the majority collection of dictatorial governments who group together, who don't have that much in common, but one thing they have in common is let's attack the world's only Jewish state. It's a kind of modern form of anti-Semitism in international politics. That doesn't mean that Israel shouldn't be criticized. Of course, Israel is not perfect. Of course, Israel should be criticized where criticism is warranted. But that's not what the UN or indeed elements of the media are doing. This relentless bashing of Israel is leading, according to the statement from Washington, to attacks on Jews in the United States and elsewhere. So we had in Boulder, Colorado, a peaceful vigil where 8 Jews were set on fire on Sunday afternoon, including an 88-year-old Holocaust survivor who managed to survive the Holocaust, where, of course, 6 million Jews were burned to death in gas chambers and crematorium and other methods. He managed to survive that, only to be set on fire when holding a peaceful vigil in Boulder, Colorado. And so what Washington is saying is all this invective, exaggeration, fake news and stuff, free Palestine. This is not just about freeing Palestine. We all want a better world. We want to free Palestine. We want every country to be free. But this is a kind of agitated, provocative, incendiary movement that goes way beyond protest and is leading to actual violence against random innocent Jews. We have the governor of Pennsylvania, Democrat, Josh Shapiro's house being set on fire while he was having a Passover Seder with his family this April, 2 months ago, again in the name of Palestine. This is not protest. So the US government is linking, and I would agree with them, inflammatory statements by people like the UN Secretary General and others in the media that go way beyond any criticism of Israel. You know, I'm in Israel.
And Mr. Gross, you say this is, you know, you've mentioned anti-Semitism here in terms of the UN and the role, and now if Israel has that view of the UN, where does that leave collaboration for a ceasefire, and where does that leave Israel diplomatically, if that's how the UN is viewed?
Well, as we know, the main ceasefire negotiations are being carried out with the aid of Qatar and Egypt through the Trump administration. They're not being carried out through the UN. Trump's envoy, Witkoff, is negotiating or trying to bridge a ceasefire, and they're using Qatar and Egypt. Now, Qatar is essentially an ally of Hamas. Egypt more neutral. America is closer to Israel. So you have 3 parties here representing, you know, essentially Qatar represents Hamas. So we, as your other guest pointed out, we succeeded in getting a ceasefire that lasted a few weeks and saw a pause in fighting in January. We hope there'll again be another ceasefire, but there's a huge sticking point, which is whether it would be whether it will mark Hamas giving up power. As your guest, the doctor, said, there may be individual Hamas members who will play a role in post-war Gaza, but only if they renounce jihad, only if they want to become a normative political party that wants to build. I'm going to bring
Dr. Dermitage back in here, as there's a lot to unpack, and one thing I do want to bring to him. Do you agree that Qatar is essentially Hamas, and that's where we are in terms of finding a ceasefire? Okay, thank you.